Have you ever noticed someone who seems to carry an invisible anchor? Not in a heavy way, but something that grounds them, orients them, gives their movements a particular direction. One moment they're navigating the chaos of daily life, traffic, deadlines, disappointments. The next, they pause, close their eyes briefly, or touch something at their neck, reconnecting to something you can't see. They speak about events with a quiet certainty, as if there's a larger story being written that you're only seeing one page of. People who are religious move through the world with a dual awareness. They're fully present in the tangible, paying bills, raising children, pursuing careers, yet simultaneously attuned to something beyond it. You might see them bow their head before a meal in a crowded restaurant, unfazed by others watching, or notice a small text on their desk, worn from repeated reading. Their decisions seem filtered through an invisible framework, a set of questions about meaning and rightness that extends beyond immediate consequences. It's in those quiet gestures, the whispered prayer in a difficult moment, the specific way they speak about suffering or joy, the peace that settles over them in the midst of uncertainty, that you begin to sense something foundational. There's a particular quality to how they hold the world, like they're reading a layer of reality others don't perceive. People who are religious often live with a persistent sense of relationship to something greater than themselves. When you're with them, they might seem like anyone else, concerned with practical matters, engaged in everyday conversations, wrestling with ordinary problems. Yet beneath the surface, there's a constant awareness of being seen, known, held by a presence they can't prove but feel deeply. This awareness shapes how they interpret experiences. A coincidence becomes providence. A hardship becomes a test or lesson. A moment of beauty becomes evidence of divine care. They have rhythms and rituals that structure their lives in ways both visible and invisible. Prayers at specific times, dietary restrictions, weekly gatherings, annual observances. These aren't just habits, they're touchstones, moments of reconnection to their core beliefs and community. You might notice them excusing themselves at certain times of day, declining specific foods without fanfare, or organizing their week around religious gatherings. On the surface, these can seem like constraints, but for them, they're anchors, reminders of what they believe gives life meaning and direction. Community often plays a central role in their experience. Religious spaces become more than buildings. They're homes for a particular kind of belonging. In these spaces, people speak a shared language of faith, understand references to sacred texts, participate in collective rituals that bind them across generations. You may observe them in these settings, a different version of themselves perhaps, more open, more vulnerable, more at home. There's a sense of being understood at a fundamental level, of not having to explain or defend the beliefs that shape everything. This orientation often develops through multiple pathways. Some are raised in religious traditions, absorbing beliefs and practices from earliest memory like a native language. Faith becomes woven into their identity so thoroughly they can't separate who they are from what they believe. Others come to religion later, often through crisis, loss, or searching, a conscious choice made in response to questions about meaning, suffering, or purpose that other frameworks couldn't answer. Still others experience moments of conviction, encounters they interpret as divine, that shift their entire understanding of reality. They experience both profound comfort and genuine struggle within their faith. The comfort comes from feeling part of a larger story, having answers to existential questions, believing that suffering has purpose and death isn't the end. There's a peace in surrendering certain anxieties to divine will, in trusting that someone or something benevolent is ultimately in control. You might notice a particular resilience in how they face hardship, not without pain, but with an underlying trust that sustains them through it. Yet the struggle is real too. Religious people often wrestle with doubt, with the gap between what they believe should happen and what actually does, with the problem of suffering in a world they believe is divinely governed. They experience the tension between religious ideals and human imperfection, their own and others. You might notice them in moments of questioning, late-night conversations about why prayers go unanswered, why injustice persists, why faith sometimes feels distant or empty. These doubts don't necessarily weaken their religiosity. For many, wrestling with difficult questions deepens rather than diminishes their faith. Their moral framework often stems directly from their beliefs. Religious teachings provide not just spiritual guidance but ethical direction, how to treat others, what choices to make, what values to prioritize. This can create clarity in decision-making, a sense of right and wrong that feels objective rather than subjective. But it can also create conflict, particularly in pluralistic societies where religious values clash with secular norms. You might notice them navigating this tension carefully, sometimes advocating for their beliefs, sometimes quietly adhering to them despite social pressure, sometimes questioning which aspects of their tradition are essential and which are cultural. It isn't always easy to hold religious identity in a secular world. Many religious people feel misunderstood, stereotyped, or dismissed. Their beliefs might be seen as naive, regressive, or even dangerous by those outside their tradition. This can lead to defensiveness or withdrawal, or sometimes to a kind of code switching, one version of themselves in religious spaces, another in secular contexts. You might notice a subtle shift in how they speak, what they reveal, how much of their faith perspective they bring into conversations depending on the setting. People who are religious often carry an acute awareness of transcendence, a sensitivity to sacred moments, to experiences that feel like encounters with the divine. A birth, a sunset, a narrow escape, an answered prayer. These become confirmations of their worldview, evidence of presence beyond the material. It's not that non-religious people don't have profound experiences. It's that religious people interpret them through a theological lens that gives them specific meaning. It's important to recognize the diversity within religiosity. Some practice with rigorous orthodoxy, adhering closely to traditional teachings and practices. Others hold their beliefs more loosely, picking and choosing elements that resonate while discarding others. Some are deeply certain, others maintain faith while acknowledging doubt. You might notice this spectrum even within single congregations, the devout and the questioning sitting side by side, united by shared tradition if not identical belief. This orientation also reveals how meaning-making systems shape behavior in profound ways. Religious people often find purpose in service, viewing their actions as forms of worship or obedience to divine command. They may prioritize values like forgiveness, humility, or sacrifice differently than secular frameworks might emphasize. The belief system becomes a lens through which all of life is interpreted and navigated. Sometimes, their faith becomes visible in unexpected moments. The calm they maintain during crisis, the forgiveness they extend when it seems impossible, the hope they carry despite circumstances that would crush it. These moments reveal something of what sustains them, not just intellectual belief, but lived experience of something they trust is real and good, even when invisible. Over time, religious practice can deepen or evolve. Some grow more committed as they age, finding increasing comfort and meaning in their tradition. Others drift away, their beliefs changing as they encounter new experiences or ideas. Many cycle through seasons of closeness and distance, their relationship with faith as dynamic as any human relationship. Ultimately, being religious is an expression of both seeking and finding, seeking meaning, purpose, connection to something beyond the self, and finding, or believing they've found, answers in specific traditions, texts, and practices. Observing it closely, you realize it's not simply about believing certain propositions, but about inhabiting a worldview where the material and spiritual interweave, where individual lives connect to cosmic purpose, where daily choices carry eternal significance.